Neuroscience studies wet neural tissue. Psychology maps subjective human experience. Mathematics charts abstract dynamical systems. We treat these as completely separate disciplines, but researcher Mustafa M. Denis proposes they are observing the exact same underlying phenomenon, just from different vantage points. Every thought you have, every emotion you feel, and even large-scale societal movements can be formally described as stable mathematical organizations emerging from continuous regulation. This unifying framework is known as Organizational Geodynamics. It provides a single mathematical language connecting the physics of moving particles to the biology of a cell and straight up to human psychology. Until we translate human consciousness and social behavior into this rigorous topological framework, our understanding of both intelligence and society will remain incomplete. Long before the first complex emotion appeared, the earliest living cells operated on a simple binary: organizational stability versus organizational instability. This diagram illustrates an organism on a central baseline. Survival depends on tracking 4 conditions: beneficial states, harmful states, increasing deviation, or decreasing deviation. These dictate basic biological responses across all life forms: attraction, avoidance, activation, and inhibition. Human emotion is an evolutionary refinement of this exact primitive mechanism. Early evolutionary biologists recognized that complex emotional expressions in animals were deeply tied to basic survival functions. Our subjective feelings stem directly from a mathematical drive to maintain internal equilibrium against external chaos. We experience an emotional spectrum that feels limitless, yet the biological hardware generating it is finite. While we often categorize observable behaviors like happiness or sadness, scientists like Jaak Panksepp identified deeper underlying motivational systems driving those behaviors. These foundational drivers point to what Denis calls homeostatic deviation classes. Much like how billions of genetic sequences are built from just 4 DNA bases, our complex emotional life is built from a limited set of organizational deviations. These finite deviations act as a structural grammar. They combine recursively to generate every composite emotion a human can feel. This diagram maps how a primary deviation, like fear, combines with other cognitive functions. Multiply fear by memory, and the resulting mathematical output is anxiety. Multiply fear by prediction, and you get worry. Because emotion follows this strict structural grammar, our subjective experiences map directly to predictable, topological systems. We can physically map these grammatical structures in the brain using the Brain Kinematics Model, or BKM. In classical physics, a state variable tracks a moving object. In BKM, this maps precisely to a cognitive organizational state. Where classical math tracks a physical trajectory through space, BKM tracks organizational strain flow, the actual evolving neural architecture of a thought. What you experience as a repetitive habit is an attractor, a stable geometric pocket in the brain's regulatory flow that continuously pulls your thoughts inward. A sudden psychological breakthrough, or a radical shift in perspective, models mathematically as a bifurcation, a literal splitting and reorganization of the cognitive landscape. Personality traits and recurrent thoughts are rigid, measurable topological architectures, forming, reforming, and stabilizing inside the brain. This points to a specific principle: geodynamical equivalence classes. Systems constructed from entirely different physical materials belong to the exact same organizational class if they share the same regulatory topology. This diagram illustrates a limit cycle, a stable, repeating trajectory that isolates a flow into a continuous, predictable loop. Apply that exact topological shape to atmospheric physics, and it describes a massive meteorological system regulating pressure and energetic flow. Apply that same mathematical organization to astrophysics, and you see the invariant structure governing a spiral galaxy. And in human psychology, this precise limit cycle governs rumination, a mind trapped, circling a single, inescapable thought. Whether the system is built from water vapor, stardust, or neural tissue is irrelevant. The universe relies on universal organizational invariance, bridging physical mechanics directly to human psychology. This mathematical equivalence forces a complete reevaluation of psychiatric illness. A disorder is an altered organizational attractor. the brain's geometric landscape has become deformed. This grid models depression as an excessively deep basin, a sinkhole trapping the mind. Anxiety maps as highly unstable boundaries, continuously jittering between shallow neighboring basins. Obsession manifests as a persistent limit cycle, forcing cognitive flow down a repetitive trajectory. Schizophrenia represents the fragmentation of this organizational topology, while dementia is the gradual erosion of the topological continuity itself. Effective psychiatric treatment requires reshaping the mind's geometric landscape and repairing its organizational structure, rather than just suppressing isolated biological symptoms. These attractors do not stop at the edge of the skull. They scale outward into macroscopic social structures, which explains the human pursuit of fame. Traditional psychological models like Maslow's hierarchy of needs typically frame fame as an external requirement for esteem or social approval. However, fame itself is a byproduct, not a primary biological or psychological need. Under continuity theory, fame acts as a macro-scale organizational feedback signal. It measures how effectively a single individual's internal organization couples recursively with progressively larger layers of societal organization, from family to community up to civilization. The drive to build a lasting legacy stems from the necessity to maintain organizational continuity, expanding a single mind's structural influence across a civilization-sized network. This creates a complete hierarchy of organizational mathematics, charting how stable systems scale from individual molecules up to entire civilizations. This concentric diagram charts the expansion, starting at level 0 with physical topology. It scales up through flow dynamics and regulatory systems, hits level 4 with psychological organization, and peaks at level 7, civilizational organization. Each ascending level recursively inherits the strict regulatory mathematics from the structures beneath it. This scaling principle outlines the necessary path for the future of artificial intelligence. Current AI systems rely on static optimization. To achieve genuine organizational intelligence, future systems must engage in continuous homeostatic regulation, adapting and stabilizing exactly like biological organisms. Viewing existence as a topology of continuous regulation provides a single mathematical language, capable of mapping the survival of a primitive cell, the architecture of human thought, and the enduring legacy of an entire civilization.